What's up, y'all? What's up? Welcome to the Pugilistic Linguistics Show. I am your host, Michael Foster, the voice of reason in an increasingly unreasonable world, and I am back. Like I say all the time, like, share, subscribe, holla at your boy. Let's get this podcast out to the masses. Get word of mouth. Pass it around to the people. Take two pulls and pass. Do it all. Hit the notification bell to be notified when new episodes drop. Help me out. Let's blow this up in 2026. Now, before I get into the topic of today, I've had some people ask me about the content of my podcast. Like, why do I seem so combative? Why do I pick the topics that I picked? That was the general gist of it. And the only response I had to them was, well, the podcast is called Pugilistic Linguistics. What did you expect? When a podcast is named Fighting Words, what do you think it's going to be about? Rainbows and unicorns? Puppies and popcorn? What do you think? These are the rantings of a man who is mad as hell and can't take it anymore. There are a lot of things out here that need to be spoken upon. There's too many things that are brushed aside, ignored for the sake of what, peace or prosperity or oppression, whatever the reason is. And I'm just one man yelling into the void. There needs to be many of us. There needs to be more of me pointing out the injustices as they see them. Now, am I always right? No. Am I always wrong? No. But all of these things are as I see them. And my perspective is my perspective. But whether I'm right or I'm wrong, it comes from a place of let's do better. And when let's do better is your criteria, I don't think you can go wrong. Now that diatribe is over, let's get into the diatribe of the day. I'm going to talk about some places. Let's see if you can make some sense of it. Port Arthur, Tasmania. Christchurch in New Zealand. Dunblane in Scotland. What are these places all about? What is this all about? Well, these are three of the, well, actually before, there's one in Norway also. Four of the most publicized mass shootings across the world in relatively recent memory, within the last 30, 40 years. Now, what do they have in relation to each other? These incidents caused a massive change in the laws of their respective countries to make this type of violence rarer or not as common. New Zealand, Australia, Tasmania, Norway, those type of places have some of the most restrictive gun laws on earth. Japan is also another country like that. And they all resulted from mass tragedy. Something happened in those places and their legislature says, okay, we can't have this in a civilized society. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's figure out how we can try to lessen the severity and the frequency of it. Now, no law is 100%. Okay, so I'm not naive to think, okay, well, they banned everything, so it ends. No law is 100%. As long as there's a will, there is a way to make things happen. I'm fully aware of that. If you want to go into a supermarket or a school or whatever, you want to kill people, you'll figure out a way. Even if you've got to poison their lunch, you'll figure out a way. And in some cases, you may still be able to smuggle a handgun in and do what you need to do. But the goal of these laws is to make it harder. At absolute worst, if I ban assault rifles and make it almost impossible to get one, yeah, you may still get a handgun. But the thing about it is, in the time it takes you to fire 17 shots from a handgun, you can fire 45 shots from a semi-automatic rifle. Those 28 other people who don't get hit will thank you. Now, is it still tragic? Absolutely. But if you can mitigate it somehow, why not? So those incidents was the impetus behind restrictive gun laws in those countries. And to this point, it has served the intended purpose. How many times have you heard of a mass shooting in Scotland lately? When was the last time you heard of a mass shooting in Tasmania or Australia or New Zealand or Japan or whatever? England. It's been a while. Now, granted, it doesn't stop the killing. You know, if you want to kill somebody, you pick up a machete, you pick up a knife, you'll throw spaghetti in the man's face, whatever. If you want to kill somebody, you will. But what I'm speaking about is, let's lessen the massacre if we can. Now, Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, Aurora, Colorado, Columbine, Uvalde, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, Pulse Nightclub, Mandalay Bay, Pearl, Mississippi, University of Texas at Austin, Charleston, South Carolina, so on and so on. Now, what is that? Those are the mass shootings that have happened on American soil over the last, say, 50 years. I think Austin, Texas at Austin was about 60 years ago. So if you want to throw that one out, throw that one out. But the bottom line is, these are the ones that happen on American soil. And Lord, I have not even touched upon the grocery store in Buffalo. It's another one. I'm drawing a blank on them because there's so many of them. I can't pick one. But what are these? These are massacres that happen on American soil. And they happen with regularity. They happen with frequency. Some not so much with such a casualty count, but when 2 or 3 are gathered, it's a tragedy that needs to be, if not stopped, at least mitigated. And like I've said before, if people want to kill, they'll figure out a way. I'm not talking about this will stop everything in its track. No. But if you can mitigate it, why not? That's what I don't understand. If you can stop this person from firing 100 rounds, and they can only fire 20, that's 80 potential victims that aren't hit. I like those numbers better. If you force that person to grab a machete because he can't get his hands on a gun, even more people have a fighting chance. That cat, Stephen Paddock in Vegas at the Mandalay Bay, those people at that festival were sitting ducks. He had a perch on him. The guy, Charles Whitman in Texas, at Austin, at the college, they were sitting ducks. He had to drop on him. He had a perch on him. They didn't have a chance. But if we can put an end, or at least make it next to impossible to get their hands on high capacity, high powered rifles, more people have a fighting chance. And damn, what y'all got against people having a fighting chance? Do they all deserve to die because your Second Amendment is so precious to you? And let's talk about that for a second. The reason we can't pass any truly useful legislation on guns is because of the Second Amendment. But I will submit to you, when the Second Amendment was written in 1789, I believe, the framers of the Constitution had no concept of what weaponry will end up being in the 21st century. They were shooting muskets that had lead balls in them back then, where it took 45 seconds to load each one. They had no concept of being able to fire 40 bullets in 45 seconds. And for that reason alone, is why the Constitution needs to be a living, breathing document. Yes, it says what it says, but it should also fit the times. As I go off into my diatribe, the Constitution also said black folk were 60% human. That had to change. It has to change with the times. But let's talk about the text of that amendment, shall we? The text says, the first few words, a well-regulated militia, being essential to the free state, blah, 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 blah. A well-regulated militia. So the text itself speaks to gun regulation. Yet everybody on the right is against gun regulation. Yet they wrap themselves in that Second Amendment. And the kicker is there's no subtext, there's no hidden subtext in that amendment. There's no quote unquote or unless this, that, and the third happens. No, a well-regulated militia, being essential to a free state, blah, blah, blah. Now, I personally would argue that amendment means something different than what y'all think it means, but I'm no constitutional scholar. I just make sense of shit when I read it. I got reading comprehension skills. I was good at that at school. I think that amendment doesn't say what everybody thinks it says, but that's neither here nor there. If Scotland can figure it out, if England can figure it out, England has a fraction of the gun crime that America does. I think I read somewhere England has like 1/5 the population, but something along the lines of 1/20th of the gun crimes. So America has 4 times the gun crime as England does, if they were the same size. Japan is even lower. What have they figured out that America refuses to acknowledge? Do more children need to die? Do more pregnant women need to die going to a movie? That the Aurora, Colorado one was at a showing of The Dark Knight. It was in a movie theater. Sandy Hook is an elementary school. Them kids just got up that morning to go to school. Columbine, them kids were eating lunch. Uvalde, more children, and not, these are actual children, fourth and third and fourth and fifth graders. They deserve to die because you want to wrap yourself in your precious amendment. Nobody wants your damn guns, but they're in a civilized society that is not actively in combat on their homeland. There's no need for an AK-47 to be in civilian hands. I don't give a fuck what you say. You can have your rifles for hunting and your handguns for personal safety and personal protection. Fine. But there is no need for an AR-15, a Draco, or any of this other shit out there. There's no need for that to be in civilian hands unless they're actively in combat with a foreign power. And if you can't agree on that, then something's wrong with you. That's just real talk. Something wrong with you. Y'all kill me talking about how Democrats want to take their guns. You notice they haven't taken your guns yet. What, they forgot? If that was such a big thing on their agenda, would you think they just forgot to do it? They don't want your damn guns. They want responsible gun ownership and these high capacity, high powered 200 feet per second, 2,000 feet per second weapons or whatever they are. They don't need to be in public hands. You ain't hunting Al Qaeda. You ain't fighting the Third Reich. You shooting grandmas. You shooting little leaguers. You shooting housewives. And in a civilized society, or in a so-called civilized society, why is that necessary? They all figured it out. But see, we don't want to figure it out. And then y'all come with this bullshit argument about, well, gun control. Some of the states that have the worst gun crimes have the most strictest gun laws. They love to bring up Chicago when they talk about this shit. Yeah, Chicago has a serious gun problem. But those guns ain't manufactured in Chicago. Or had you not realized that? Illinois has some of the strictest gun laws, but they are surrounded by states with the most lax gun laws in the country. And therefore, Chicago has a gun problem. Do you see the correlation? It ain't the fact that Chicago is so lawless, which it can look like. It's the fact that the states around them don't crack down on their guns. So all I got to do is drive into Indiana, do what I got to do, come back. Or deeper still, I grew up in Chicago, like I've said before, and this is really going to sound like some tinfoil hat shit, but it's kind of been proven. One of the places I grew up was on 112th and Stewart. And just to the east of Stewart Avenue, there was a freight train. It was a train track, but mostly freight trains. And these freight trains would come up and down and whatever during the course of the day. But what I also noticed, far too often, the freight train would just stop in my neighborhood. Just stop. Just sit on the tracks for sometimes days at a time. I didn't really think anything of it. Why would I? But I was talking to some people, and they always used to say, you know what, there are things on that train that they're shipping back and forth that when they stand on the tracks, people break into them and steal. And one of the things these people said to me was there are a lot of gun shipments that go up and down those tracks, along with gym shoes and clothes and shit like that, all that stuff too. But there are a lot of gun shipments. Now, I am not going to say that was the reason or that is the reason for the gun issues in Chicago. I'm not going to say that. But what I will say is I'm sure it contributes to it. Is it on purpose? I'm not saying that. I got my own thoughts about that, but I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is for a city that has, or for a state that has such restrictive gun laws, getting a gun is easy. That's the issue. Okay, Illinois enforces their gun laws, but Wisconsin needs to also. They need to be more strict. Indiana needs to be more strict. Missouri doesn't even have gun laws. You're 19, you can walk around with a gun in your hip, no problem. Iowa, same way. How about you have better gun laws and then stick to them? So a person from Chicago can't go to Indiana and get a gun, can't go to Wisconsin or go to Indiana, Iowa or Missouri. Or better yet, how about you stop the flow of illegal weapons into Illinois? So y'all talk about Chicago so badly. There are other contributing factors as to why Chicago has turned into a war zone. Because like it or not, and I hate to say it this way, you ain't gonna do nothing about what ails the human spirit that makes them want to pick up a gun. You ain't gonna do nothing about that. So at absolute worst, mitigate the damage they can do. That Nicholas Cruz kid down at Marjorie Stoneman Parkman in Florida, ain't nothing you could have done short of actually putting him away beforehand. Because quiet as it's kept. And you know what? Let me go there. And the thing about it is, some of these shooters have exhibited behaviors that should have got them locked up before they did what they did. Cruz, I pick on him because I just saw a story about him at Douglas High School. They knew something was wrong with him. Other students were like, hey, man, there's something wrong with this cat. This dude is dangerous. He might do something violent. That was stated. And I get people have rights, but my question becomes, one of the rights of society supersede the rights of an individual? Why does my right to be alive, why is my right to be alive forfeited because of his right to walk the streets? The Uvalde suspect in Texas, same thing. There were warnings to authorities about his behavior before he did what he did. Now, what can be done? I don't know, but what I am saying is, sometimes the rights of many supersede the right of one. If you've exhibited yourself to be dangerous and done dangerous shit, you should not be able to. There was a shooting at, I want to say Fort Hood, Texas. Military psychiatrist goes on the. No, this isn't the one, but anyway, I'll talk about that. Goes on to the base and shoots up a recruiting center or whatever, or a staging center where soldiers come home and get reintegrated, and soldiers go before they're deployed. This is on a military base and there's a mass shooting. If one of the most secure places in the country can't stop a mass shooting, then none of us have a chance. The one I was thinking about, though, I think it was Sutherland Springs, Texas. A former Air Force soldier walks into a church doing service, kills like 20-something people. He was found guilty previously of domestic battery or something like that, which under the Uniform Code of Military Justice precludes him from being able to legally obtain a weapon. Yet the Air Force never disclosed that to civilian authorities, so his rights to buy a legal weapon were not taken. And he walked into that church and killed 20 plus. And if you notice, out of all the American mass shootings I spoke about, not one of them has been reported to been committed with an illegal firearm. Not one. Dylan Roof in South Carolina, that Mateen dude at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, the Korean cat, I think it was Korean or something like that, at Virginia Tech, Charles Whitman in Texas, Uvalde, Douglas, Columbine, all of those were committed with legally acquired weapons. And all of them were committed with these high capacity, high caliber, automatic or semi-automatic rifles. These were not done with handguns. These were done by weapons of war. And anybody that thinks that those need to be in the hands of civilians that aren't in a war zone, you're delusional. We got to do better. And thoughts and prayers ain't enough. I don't want to hear your damn thoughts and prayers. You want to pray for something, pray for common sense in D.C. Thoughts and prayers don't do shit but piss people off. Because if you truly gave a damn, you'd want to keep all these children alive. If you truly gave a damn, you would make sure these grandmamas have a chance to live their lives. Or these pregnant women, or these God, there we go. God can't even get it out. God-fearing, law-abiding citizens don't get shot up in movie theaters or get shot up at country music festivals. If you really want thoughts and prayers, pray for them. Pray that society gets home safely if they leave their house. Pray for those people in Buffalo that just want to go to the grocery store and buy some food. Y'all killing me here. Metaphorically, of course. That was a horrible choice of words. But come on. If you want to act like a civilized society, even though I know America really isn't, but if you want to act like a civilized society, then we need to pass common sense laws that fit the current times. We're no longer firing musket with iron balls. Consequently, I think that amendment needs to be amended to deal with the problems of today. They wrote that amendment to deal with the problems of that time, 250 plus years ago. I have 40 plus years ago, whatever. I can't do math right now. I'm angry. It's funny. Y'all want to take these amendments to court when it's dealing with birthright citizenship. You ain't got no problem with sending that to the Supreme Court to have them decide on it. So the 14th Amendment has a problem. Y'all want to update it to today's society. But the Second Amendment is sacrosanct. You can't touch it. So there's a precedence of taking an amendment to court. It's just the ones you all think y'all give a damn about. Y'all don't give a damn about birthright citizenship, so you want to get rid of that shit. But you want your guns. And there's something wrong with that. There's something inherently perverse about that. Again, have your rifles for hunting and sporting, and have your handguns for personal protection, and shotguns for whatever you use shotguns for, fine. But AK-47s, AR-15s, and Dracos, and whatever, all the other shit that fit in that category have no business in your hands if you're not actively fighting Al-Qaeda, actively fighting the Third Reich or Mussolini or some shit like that. Ain't no wars happening on 115th Street. What the fuck you need that for? Anyway, we need common sense. We need common sense. Funny thing is, when I started this, I didn't think I would get that riled up, but apparently, this is a subject that riles me up. So, how do we get? I don't know how we go about it. Hire better people in DC. Well, good luck with that. We're not interested in that. So I don't know if it'll ever change. But I'm gonna get on down now. I think I've said enough for one Sunday morning. Like I said before, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, interact in the comments. If you got something to say about it, let me know. I want to hear it. But in the meantime, in between time, like I say before and like I say always, take care of yourselves and each other, because we all we got. Peace.